Welcome to the Nonprofits and Media Podcast, where we talk to leaders involved with media inside a variety of nonprofit organizations about the different ways they approach marketing and communications. I'm Nathan Pfaff, and my job is to tease out what benefits or results they've seen in their content strategy so that you can apply those to your own life or organization. Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Nonprofits and Media. Today we're talking with Randy Tennedy, Director of Grant Making at the Maclellan Foundation. The Maclellan Foundation is a Christian grant-making organization that partners with ministries and nonprofits around the world to strengthen their capacity and cultivate sustainable, locally supported gospel work. Randy has been with Maclellan for nearly 2 decades, serving in global strategy roles before stepping into his current position. With a background in ministry and even software sales, he brings a mix of mission conviction and business clarity to the nonprofit world. In this episode, we talk about Maclellan's bridge strategy, a shift from traditional project funding towards building sustainable, locally funded ministries that can thrive long-term without depending primarily on foreign support. Randy also walks us through a practical framework called NISO that he uses to evaluate both ministries and media. We also unpack what serious funders are actually looking for today, how documentary storytelling fits into donor engagement, and why clarity and execution matter more than ever in a crowded funding landscape. If you're curious about generosity, long-term sustainability in ministry, and communicating impact in a way that truly resonates with donors, this conversation is packed with insight from someone who has reviewed thousands of proposals and funded work across continents. Here it is. Take a listen. Thanks, Randy. You and your organization helped fund this documentary with Museo Compasión, a nonprofit in the Amazon. Let's start by talking about how that came about and what were your hopes for it.
Okay. Well, sure. So we've known those folks down in the Amazon for a couple of years. They're relatively new to us, and kind of getting right off into the weeds a little bit. The foundation is part of has created something we call the Ministry Sustainability Fund, which is composed of other people's money and ours, all pooled together in a donor advised fund. And the foundation then is authorized to distribute those funds according to some criteria around granting. Okay. So when I came back from the Amazon, I was really impressed with what I was seeing there. And my director said, hey, we want to shoot some good stories that we can share with our funding partners. It's a giving collaboration of sorts, so they can see what's happening with the funds they provide. And so I said, I know the perfect one. We need to go down to the Amazon and talk to those people, because what they're doing is so incredible, and it's still in startup mode, and there's a lot of good trajectory here. So good story. So Wes Fulkerson is who I knew. And actually, I knew him through his mom and dad because we go to church together. So it's kind of a funny connection. So I just called Wes out of the blue and said, hey, we want to do this thing in the Amazon. You in? And he was real excited. So he goes, I know just the guy. So we called Alex Bell. They both bent their schedules all around. And we decided the best time to go is in July, because it's when the river's still high, but the rainy season's over. And it turned out to be the perfect time. So we went down there to shoot that story.
Nice. Yeah, well, from their point of view, I can imagine how if you find an amazing project like this with an organization that's doing such good work, you would, want to do everything to open up your schedule to make sure you can help out and be a part of it. So
they're really committed. I mean, really committed people, Wes and Alex, and they, we paid for all of it, but they were very generous in their time and everything like that. So
the video project was more for your guys's funders than it was for the organization and their donors.
Yeah, well, the what we told them in this particular case, we actually did 3 of these videos: one in the Amazon, one in South Asia, and one in Africa for an event we did in Washington, D.C. back in October. And so we told all 3 of these organizations, we want to shoot this for this purpose, then we're going to give it all to you and you can do what you want with it. So, and Alex also provided all the video content, not just what was in the final video, but everything. So then they have the freedom to use that as any way they want to, as a gift from us. So That's how it was brokered, if you will. And they're all
Yeah.
very happy to do it. I mean, they were excited about it and very, very pleased with the outcome.
Yeah, gotcha. Um, could you talk about the ministry sustainability fund then a little bit? Because I was really, I guess, a little bit surprised, but also super happy to see that it was part of that once I realized what it was. So could you kind of
Yeah,
explain that a little bit? Yeah.
I'll do my best. So the foundation, the McClellan Foundation, a number of years ago, we're 80 years old. We've been around a long time, and about every, I don't know, something seems like about every 20, 25 years, we make, the J curve. We feel like we sort of peaked out in what we're doing, and we redefine ourselves um, to make sure that we're in line with what we think the Lord's telling us to do, and in line with what we're hearing around the world in our grant work. And so we, about 5 years ago, said, I think we're at the point where we need to shift our focus from project funding, kind of traditional grant funding, and we need to move towards helping local ministries become healthier and stronger, and help them then gain local support. So the whole idea is the way we say it is local ministries funded locally, prayed for locally, and well, I did it all wrong, but you get the idea. So we set about that task, and it's a new thing for us. We were focused primarily on project stuff, so we've had to ramp up our own capacity. And then we created this thing we call the bridge strategy. And it's the idea, like if you think of a river and you're going to build a suspension bridge across that river, you start on both banks of the river and you build to the middle. That's how they did this, the Golden Gate and all those suspension bridges. So we use that metaphor to say on the left side of the bridge are the local ministries. And there we've defined 9 dimensions of capacity. I won't get into all that, but there are things like leadership and governance and measurements and evaluation and operations, that kind of thing. So we come alongside the ministries kind of in a consultative way to help them identify where they lack some capacity and help them increase their capacity. The idea then, instead of like if they're a church planting organization, rather than funding their direct church planting work, we want to help them have healthier trees that produce more fruit. So rather than directly funding the field work and the fruit development side, we fund the capacity of the organization to bear better fruit or more fruit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's sort of the left side of the bridge. And then the right side of the bridge is local resources. So it's actually kind of a capacity building activity as well, but we use all our generosity tools, and we sponsor events where there's some matching funds we provide and things like that, so that the local Christians begin to give. And the idea is at some point we're going to connect both sides of this bridge. So the local resources are giving to local work. And it's the whole idea of collaboration again in a different way. We have a number of tools on that side. And I can get into all that if you like, but primarily we use generosity teaching and spiritual like retreat experiences where people get a hold of the idea that God is a generous God, and that Jesus Christ was the ultimate expression of generosity towards us. And as his image bearers, we also need to be generous, not because we're duty bound or required to, but because we want to be like him. And
Yeah.
so, so many people have never heard this. I mean, all over the world, we get constantly told, I've never heard this before. This is new to me. And so we're seeing just massive movements of generosity now all around the world through very simple teaching. And it's all free. It's all, actually, it's all Creative Commons license. Anybody can do it. It's in something like 45 languages now. And there's just lots of stories around that. So we try to promote those kinds of things within the churches, because a lot of churches think we're too poor to give, and they realize after this teaching they can give something. And then they become more committed to the work because now they have buy-in, they have ownership of it. So it's just all around very positive. And
Yeah.
so so anyway, the bridge strategy, what we did was we went to these partners in this MSF fund and said, hey, We will provide all the legwork, all the due diligence, cover all the costs to pursue this bridge strategy. If you like this bridge strategy, why don't you help us out by providing funding? And so that's basically the deal we made. So we've got a number of funders who put funds into this donor advised fund, and we pay for all the work, all the due diligence. We have 42 people around the world doing this work. And um, so we speak, I think, combined 48 languages or something. And all the people that work for us are from that culture, from that place. They're not foreigners. They're not Americans or
Oh, wow.
Australians.
Yeah.
They're all. So like I have a person in Indonesia. She's Indonesian.
Yeah.
Someone in Malaysia, she's Malaysian. Someone in Philippines. Someone in Thailand. People in India. We have people all across Africa. And we have people in Latin America as well. Here in the U.S. too. We're Americans. In the U.S. we use Americans.
Yeah, we need the help too.
Middle East, North Africa. They're Egyptians, Jordanians. So
Yeah, I love it.
that's how we're structured. So it's pretty good value proposition to these funders. They're like, wow, this is great. So we can, because we have a really good reputation of 80 years of trying to do things excellently. And because of our breadth, it's a pretty good value proposition. Hey, put some funds into this donor advised fund, and we will charge you no fees to give it out, according to this bridge strategy idea. So that's what we're doing. We're about a year and a half into that at this point.
Yeah.
I love it. Explain that in a way that makes sense to you.
I think so. I mean, I've done a little bit of research on the back end as well, but yeah, I think it makes sense. And I love the long-term thinking of it, like, because it's essentially saying we don't want to just come in and help prop up these organizations one time or for a while. Like, we want to enable it to then get up and running and run itself so that we can then take more of a backseat and let it continue on.
Yeah. And there's a lot of philosophical questions around all that. One of the things we observe often is that a lot of these organizations are heavily foreign funded. Many times, up in the 90% level, where all the funds are coming from the US and Europe or someplace. And when COVID hit, it woke everyone up. It's like, oh, we're vulnerable. We had during the COVID time, we were making what we called lifeblood grants. We were giving grants to people so they wouldn't completely collapse. And so that was part of what informed us on this. And so we think that we can switch these percentages around. If we can get, 75, 80% local funding, there's a role for the global church to participate, but they don't need to be so much owners of it as they are right now. And this is a long-term strategy. There are places in the world where it's going to be a generational change. It's not something you can see happen in 5 to 10 years. It just isn't going to happen like that. There's other places though, where it's already happening, where we're very encouraged. So it's all over the map. You can imagine, places.
Yeah.
In some places, it's been very surprising how quickly they've gone to self-sufficiency in places you would never believe. So it's pretty interesting. It really is. It's quite interesting and rewarding.
I love that. And I love the transferring ownership of it. One of the things that I was really encouraged by, and the reason I wanted to talk with you, is because if like projects like this documentary or media is part of this larger strategy for sustainability, that means that you guys view media and videos as part of the longer term sustainability of the fund or of the organization. So could you talk a little bit about that, about how you use it as a tool in that way?
Well, we're doing that. So this was the first time we've done that. Those 3 films were our first 3. Okay. And I imagine we're going to do it some more. They aren't cheap to produce,
Right.
But the primary audience for it are these sustainability fund partners, because we need them to understand, because most of them aren't going to go these places. You're not going to get, some of these people to make a trip to the Amazon and try to see it. And it's a burden to the ministry to host all that kind of stuff. So, and in some of the places we went, like in South Asia, it would be difficult to get them to choose to go to that place because it's a difficult place to go. Um, so um, so the idea of the videos, I believe we're going to continue doing them in a documentary fashion to help tell the story that of that specific ministry, but also the story of what it means to help build capacity and sustainability in the context.
Mhm.
Like one of the things we did in the Amazon, which I think was brought up in the video, was we came along and said, hey, why don't we create a gas fund so that so that the ministry on the ground who knows who the good partners are, but the fuel cost keep them from doing the work they want to do. So we said, we'll provide the fuel. You provide the screening process, the filtering process to make sure that people getting the fuel are actually doing gospel work. And if they are, we trust you to do that. We did that both for boats on the water, but we also did it for the aviation ministry there, because that's even harder to get funds for because the fuel's expensive and costs a lot of money to operate these aircraft. And so we've created those two uh, gas funds to, and it's a capacity activity, right? We're
Yeah.
creating capacity in the entities to be able to do the work they want to do. So it's
Mhm.
been really, really cool to watch it
Yeah,
happening.
that gas fund was part of the film, and I love that it was just like, reducing that roadblock or hurdle for these people so that they don't have to worry about it and they can keep sharing the gospel or church planting or doing the work. So,
Yeah.
okay, do you know if these 3 videos are they finished now and have the
Oh,
partners seen them? Yeah.
oh yeah, yeah. We showed them all in October at our gathering that we did. So all
Okay.
3 are on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know if or how the organizations themselves are then using these
Well, one
videos?
of them I do. One of them, and it's a very much in a dangerous area, so there's a lot of security tied to it.
Okay.
But I know that they've taken. So we gave them the video, and then and I and then I believe Alex or someone edited out stuff that they don't want to find its way into the public domain, and then they're taking that and they've done their own thing and they're sharing that with their funders and other people to help tell their story because it's a fascinating story. It's among the Muslim people and very fast growing, and it's also high percentage of people are baptized, like over 98, which is very unusual. And they're
Wow.
seeing rapid growth, and they're seeing um, and they've actually already moved to full self-sustainability
Wow, that's amazing.
through the stations of generosities, the tool I mentioned, which allows them to teach their people about generosity. So the churches are giving and they're actually planting other churches and everything on their own. We don't, they created a widows fund in the country and as a way to provide care for their widows and also as an outreach effort. And we match their funding. So they raise the funds and we match it. That's our only participation now. It's an amazing story. I mean, the fact that they can do this and grow like they're growing and we're matching them now, not the other way around, which is really cool. And so
Wow.
it's a real success story. So we really wanted to tell that story, but it's just so sensitive.
Yeah. Is that part of the film that was done?
Yes,
That
it
explanation?
was.
That's
Yes, it is.
amazing. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I wanna come back to helping organizations tell their story in a second, but first I want to talk about when projects like these get greenlit, are there any expectations on the front end, or do you guys have an idea of like what success looks like on the back end, or what follow up looks like, or could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So remember, we're trying to help explain the bridge strategy through case study examples via video. So each one of these was a case study. They were pretty short. I think the Amazon one was 11 minutes or something. Some of the others were even a little bit shorter than that. Um, so what we're doing is we're letting the ministry tell the story of what it means to them to be sustainable. And like in the one for the Amazon, I actually did speak in that one, but the others I did not. I was never in it. It was just that that's how they wanted to do that one. So that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so the so we chose them. based upon based on our understanding of their field ministry and based on our understanding of of their needs and how we're addressing them, so that we thought the story was clean and told it in a non-confusing way. There's some of them are fairly complicated, and it requires a lot of local knowledge, and it requires, you know, contextual understanding and worldview dimensions and things where it's really hard to tell that story in a succinct way. So the Amazon one was an example of one felt we could tell the story in a very succinct way, and actually let the ministry tell their story. And then we just sort of brought out those elements as we did the discussions with them.
Mhm.
So we weren't putting words in their mouths. We weren't telling them. There was no script. There was no, rehearsals or anything. We just went in there, set up the cameras, and had the kids sit down, and we started talking to them.
Yeah.
And the teachers, and you saw how compelling the story was about taking these education model into these villages. And they've already expanded into several cities since we were there. And we were there in July, so it's only been 6 months, and they're really going. And it's exciting to watch,
Yeah.
And anyway, there's a lot more to do, but with them. But I think it told the story really well.
Yeah.
So that was the objective, to tell the story really well and showcase an example of ministry sustainability strategy.
Yeah. I love the longer form nature of it. Like even 11 to 17 minutes or so is like more than just that 2-minute promotional video or testimonial video that you often see on social media, but it really allows the audience to like learn about the org in a more in-depth way, learn about their work, get emotionally invested, and then inspired to like, join or be a part of it or partner or whatever that looks like. And so I love that these were like,
pretty much everybody I talked to who watched it said they kind of teared up because we kind of managed to get the heart of these people to come out.
Right. And that's the power of these like longer form from videos. So
and also I just want to say, in the video, there's a parrot that flies through. That actually just happened. That was not, that wasn't, a fake animation or, it was, the parrot literally flew through.
Yeah,
Like,
that's amazing.
Everybody knows, what did that? It's like, yeah, it really happened.
Yeah, that's what happens down there.
Big old giant red macaw.
Yeah, crazy. That's really cool. So in terms of helping these organizations tell their story, I'm sure for these people who are in the weeds and they might not know how to like do their elevator pitch per se, or like tell what they're doing succinctly. Do you guys like help come alongside them to do that? And where do you see the pitfalls of people in these orgs learning how to tell their story in a way that's translatable?
Yeah, that's a good question. Normally, I think the Amazon was a little bit of an exception. Like the other ones, we've known those people for 10, 15 years. So it was, they knew us, we knew them. We talk about this bridge strategy, all the time. They understand the principles, the ideas. They think it's hard, but they know that they also think they need to do it. So we did do, like in the Amazon example, well, in the other ones too, to a degree, but I know for sure in the Amazon one, we had a conversation prior to the trip. Here's what we're trying to say. Here's the message we want to try to convey. So make sure you prearrange the people who you think can articulate what you're doing well, so that when we come down there, those people are around and available. So they did a really good job with that. We didn't have to travel hundreds and hundreds of miles to tell the story well, because we brought people from distant places in, because we couldn't be on the ground a week. We had to be there. We were there about 2.5 days, 3 days, not long. So they did a lot of legwork on the ground to make sure that the people that could tell the story well were available, but we didn't tell them what to say. We interviewed them. So that's where Wes was so brilliant, because he was able to. So I did a lot of prep with Wes, here's the strategy, here's the things I'm looking to make sure that get it, talk about the indigenous seminary, talk about the gas fund, talk about, the desire to see unreached people reached, talk about the challenges of the long travel, get all that kind of stuff in his head. And he had taken some bullet notes for that. So in the interviews, he was asking questions to try to draw that out of them, but we never put words in their mouth. We let them tell their story their way.
Yeah.
Is that what you asked? Is that the question you want me to answer?
Yeah, no, you touched on it. It was basically like the biggest barriers ministries face in telling their story well. And you touched on finding people who are articulate and like having that set up from the beginning where, these people know how to explain them. Not only are they passionate, but they might know how to translate it better for different audiences or to communicate the vision well, and making sure that you get those people in front of the camera to be able to
Yeah.
like put the organization in the best light. Which
Like
I
the
think-
pilot, we asked the pilot who had that big map and he was saying this distance and, in these places. We asked him to do that. We said, would you please explain? Because they did all this research, for years. And so we said, would you please take a minute and explain Amazonia and what are the challenges here in your own words? So he just did that. There was no rehearsal. He just stood up, started doing it.
yeah,
And then one reason why we had like me speaking, some others speaking, was that we were trying to knit the various elements together, primarily for the benefit of the ministry partner, the ministry funders.
right,
Local people know it, but a lot of times in other cultures, they have a hard time. They don't think linearly like we in the West do so much. And so they tend to circle around. And what we were trying to create a linear the connection point so they would so that at the end you go, I get it. I get why this all makes sense.
yeah,
If we didn't do that in the crafting of the video, it might not have come through like we wanted it to. So
yeah,
there was some very intentional editing and some very intentional elements that we included to make sure that we connected the dots for the viewer to
right,
understand this is what we mean by ministry sustainability.
right, yeah.
Uh,
No, it's super powerful. Yeah. So it
we
seems
had to
like,
shoot the South Asian one twice because the first time was a total miss.
oh no.
Yeah, it was like, nope, it ain't gonna work. We had to really interject ourselves and say, we need to talk about these things. Don't assume we know your context. Don't, tell your story.
Oh,
Help us
gotcha.
understand why you're doing this. Help us understand your passion. Because they just presume because they know us. And it's like, you
Right.
can't just presume it. You have to tell us. So
Yeah.
we had to go reshoot a bunch of stuff on that one. I wish I could.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I just can't.
So it was a disaster in the sense that like there was no context for things
it was
that,
it was literally unusable. It was
yeah.
unusable.
Okay.
Uh,
People would have no grid for like what is happening or why,
yeah,
because
and there was
people
also
just
some real
assume that
production. There was some
yeah.
real production problems too. There was a lot of background noise, very distracting.
Okay.
Yeah, we were new at this. So,
Sure.
like, well, that didn't work.
Yeah.
So they sicked me on it. Actually, I was just doing the Amazon one, but whenever I have a really long-term relationship with this group, but we had hired a different organization and we basically just had to throw it away. And then
Yeah.
I were in and reshoot it. We got a different guy and we went in and we reshot the whole thing. And so it turned out okay, but
Yeah.
it wasn't as good as the Amazon. It really wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So it sounds like these projects were for partners on the Maclellan side. In your bridge strategy, you mentioned like the gas fund and stuff like that. Are there any other funds or projects that you help the organizations do within the bridge strategy that is like more media or communications focused? Maybe like creating awareness for the organization in their local context or something like that, or
To a point, like we've started doing these events, we call them giving together events. And so in some places it won't work in the outback of Africa or something, but like in a urban context where you've got some church presence, believers and believers who have more resources. We put together what we call a Giving Together event. And without getting into all the speeds and feeds of it, the idea is to get some local hosts to invite people they know to an event where we provide match funds. And then we showcase 4 ministries at that are local ministries. And we come alongside them to help them tell their story. So we help them produce. We don't go all the way to media because it's the bar is too high for that for this kind of event, but we do help them with like their PowerPoint presentation and help them think about how to articulate it. We limit them to a very short time, but they have an opportunity to present to 40 or 50 people who pre-commit to giving to one of those organizations that night.
Oh, wow.
There's a minimum gift level. So
Yeah.
the ministries are highly motivated to come. They get scrutinized and they're chosen. And then we help them with the packaging up the event. We pay for everything and we provide a match fund. And so we've seen remarkable returns on that. I think we calculated 3.25, 3x multiples of funds from what we match to. We get 3 times more than that out of the event because we believe very strongly that if we can get people to come together and collaborate and challenge one another to give, it's much more effective. And the local people know the local organizations, and they also screen them without our involvement, and then we make sure they are aligned with our granting priorities so that we're not funding stuff we don't want to grant to. But really, there's a lot there. But in the end, we're seeing a 3x return on our investment.
Wow, that's amazing.
And these are funds that are locally raised that are given to local organizations. So it's exactly the bridge strategy expressed in this event. The long-term dream is to see these people start doing these things without our participation. That's where we want to go. So once they kind of catch the idea and they start getting excited about this coming together and giving to strategic ministries that are addressing local needs, then we can step out and it'll keep going. And that's what we're trying to see happen on the local resourcing side. And then we help equip the ministry until the local guys would do that. And then we can just participate as we choose down the road.
Yeah.
So don't hold me to this. We did something like 10 of those events last year.
Oh, okay.
It raised multiple millions of dollars.
Yeah, amazing. I love that strategy of, again, it's like a vision event for the local community. And you've got things like donor matching, and
we try to put all the incentives in place for people will come.
Yeah.
And for the ministries to do their very best presentations. And we want to make sure we choose ministries that are effective. So, there's a lot of moving parts in that, but it's working and we're really excited. Yeah.
And you said the media involved in those might not necessarily be video, but there's like PowerPoints, and I don't know how in the weeds you get with like what you think is necessary for them in order to communicate their organization well, or.
So one of the challenges we've run into, especially in some of the more developing world context, even developed nations, but they have it's a worldview thing, and it's also very cultural. And so having them be succinct is difficult. We did one. I don't know if I want to say. I don't know who's going to see this or hear this.
Yeah, that's fine.
But it was in a Southeast Asian country, and it was a very successful event. But every single presenter went over time like by 10 minutes, and so it was becoming a problem. So we're changing some things. We're getting more involved up front in terms of having the ministry work through it. Let us see it. Let us critique it. Not to tell them what to say, but you need to say that more briefly. Have you considered rephrasing this? You can't have 17, bullet points on one side. You need to get it down to 3 to 5. This kind of really basic presentation skills stuff to make sure they major on the majors and don't get off on these tangents or don't get off in storytelling mode. We need you to be succinct and very professional because the people in the room are mostly business people and they've learned that. And so you don't want them to start wandering, minds wandering, or start looking at their watches because it's like we're going over time.
Because it's not run
We want it
efficiently.
to be really tight.
Yeah.
Um, but we're also trying to in the beginning of these whole events, it starts off with like a social out. So we get all these people who are invited to talk to one another and mill around, and then we have a speaker who shares, and it's a local speaker, it's not a foreigner again, who shares around the ideas of generosity and giving and local ministry importance. And it's their talk; they want to share their testimony, whatever they want to share, but it's focused on ministry. And then sometimes they tell their own story about how they give. Some are very transparent about it, which is unusual in some contexts. And then it moves into the presentation. And so there's four ministries. Each of them presents for 5 or 6 minutes. And at the end, everyone's given an opportunity to indicate what they want to give to who. And people come in thinking, well, I'll give $1,000, and they leave giving $5,000
Wow.
because they've never heard this before.
Yeah.
They've never heard of this ministry. They didn't even know it existed. So
Right.
that's that bridging again, creating these connection points. So that's what we're trying to see happen.
Yeah, I love that because a lot of times there's so much good work happening, but like people don't know. Like, how would they be aware of this other organization doing something else? So I love
I
that
do,
you
I
combine them
do,
all into one event.
I do think some of the ministries in these events do show, the 2 minute video thing,
Sure.
where, and I think even some of the speakers have used. So there's another organization called Generous Giving in the U.S., Generosity Path outside the U.S. And they have
Mhm.
these things they call Journeys of Generosity. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but
I feel
um,
like I may have heard the name.
it's been around for about 25 years,
Yeah.
US. But they produce very high quality videos telling this people telling their stories about their journey of generosity, as the name implies. And some of those videos are really effective at these giving together events. So we may have a video shown, and then the guy gets up and tells his story. After that, sort of set the stage. And it's really, I encourage you, if you haven't looked into that, look into it as a media guy. I think you really appreciate the production quality of those videos and the stories they tell. And we're trying to do more of those outside the US or European context.
Yeah.
So you're actively shooting videos and putting in Latin America and even in Africa. And I think they're trying
Yeah.
to do some somewhere in Asia right now.
Yeah.
So when
That's
people
amazing.
when people hear somebody's a story like they hear, and some of these people are very wealth, very, very wealthy people.
Mm.
And they're giving millions a year. And a lot of people in developing countries can't relate. But then there's stories of people in refugee camps and how they give in the refugee camp, which nobody is more generous than that. So nobody can say, well, he can do it because he's rich. Then
Yeah.
there's a story where it's like a
They have
lame
nothing.
woman who gave her only chicken, and it's like, I've never given my only thing I have to anything. I'm not generous like that. And it's not a beat you with it. It's like, wow, I'm challenged by this understanding of, you know, God's love for us. It's so powerful. You really encourage you to look into it. Um,
I
you
love
know,
that. I definitely will. I made a note so I can
okay.
follow.
I'll send you the link if you like to where the videos are and all that, if you're interested.
Yeah, that would be great. I would love that. Always looking to learn and see
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
Cool.
Have I gone
Well,
down a rabbit trail?
no, no, no. I love it.
Okay.
I'm not exactly what these conversations are for.
Mm. Okay.
Um, so going back to a little bit more of a high level, with McClellan wanting to like make sure that these organizations are supported well and starting to like take ownership and the bridge and sustainability and stuff like that. Um, I guess just from your perspective, do you have any advice for some nonprofit leaders when it comes to media or communication that you've seen either ways that organizations do it well or pitfalls that they tend to fall into, kind of maybe paint more of a broader brush from that perspective?
Well, there's a concept, a framework we use. We call it NISO framework, NISO, and it's a good way to tell your story in a very logical framework. So you start with the N. N stands for need. So can you describe the need you're trying to address? It's amazing how frequently people can't. You'll say, well, what are you trying to do? And they'll say, we're reaching the world. That's just not enough. We need to know we're all trying to do that to some level. So what is it specifically you're trying to do? And like a really good example is the Alpha International people in England. When you ask them that question, they say, we're trying to reach 26-year-old unchurched men. Okay, you understand what you're trying to. So now, well, what's the idea?
You can work with that. Yeah.
So the N and then the idea. What's the idea you have to address that need? Right. So then they say, well, we're going to create a video. We're going to create whatever they're going to do. Then what's the strategy? Well, we're gonna take churches, we're gonna teach them how to use this, and we're gonna send them into the bars and pubs and workplaces of young men, and they're, what I'm making that part up,
Sure.
so you have a strategy, and then the last is organization. So what is the organization's capacity to execute the strategy? So what you're looking for is alignment. So you think of them as circles. Like if the need circle's this big, but your idea is this big, your idea is the wrong idea or your need's too big. You got to bring alignment. Same with the strategy. If the strategy requires 1,000 people and you have 50 people in your organization, it's not going to work, right? So it sounds obvious, but you'd be surprised. And then the organization capacity. Do you have the capacity to deliver this strategy? And then the final piece is a little arrow that goes from the need back to the organization, and that is your evaluation process. So how do you know if you're addressing the need as an organization? Is it being done? Do you have some kind of measurement evaluation process that you can look at to say we need to tweak it? So because what I tell ministry people all the time is, this thing may be working great for 2 or 3 years, but then the world changes under your feet. And all of a sudden this strategy doesn't work anymore. Or the needs change, we saw that with the introduction of iPhones, and we saw, things change. You can't do things the way you used to. So you've got to have some kind of evaluation process. And so if you take that whole NISO framework and think about making a video, following the NISO framework tells that story quite well.
Yeah.
So it's a good
Yeah, that's great. So it's NISOE with the evaluation at the end.
Yeah.
For the feedback loop to make sure that you're staying relevant. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
You need the feedback loop. That's just NISO's easy to remember.
Yeah. And so you're recommending putting that into like a video where you say there's a problem, talk about an idea that the org has to address it, the strategy behind it, and
ideally, ideally it's not just an idea, it's been prototyped and tested in some way. So, it's not just, you're not just spitballing. You've actually tried it and it works. So now you're trying to fund it to meet the scale, the requirement, and all that stuff. But yeah. And if you look at the video we did of Amazon, you'll see that in there.
Mm-hmm.
What's the need? Well, there's all these people out there. They're too hard to get to. What's your idea to address it? Well, we're going to create an education process, and we want to take the education in the villages, and we're going to use a gas fund. So what's the strategy? The strategy was create a gas fund, and the strategy then, so we can put people on boats to go to those places so they can take the gospel to them. We're teaching teachers, all these things. And then what's the organizational capacity? Well, we have, these guys are developing stuff, and this, you saw it in there.
Yeah.
It was all there.
I love that. That's great. And it's a really simple framework to be able to put it to. So
yeah, and it's a good way to talk to donors too, because then you can connect the dots for them, and then they understand, and then they're more likely to help you.
People that are more logically minded. Along that line, as someone who works with large partners, wealthy partners and funders and stuff like that, is there something that you have seen that tends to really kind of unlock things in their mind for unlocking their generosity towards organizations? Like, are there something orgs should be aware of? Like, hey, if you position, yourself, or are able to communicate the needs that you are addressing in this way, that tends to be pretty effective for some of these people who are like wanting to figure out where to direct their generosity.
Well, the way I would answer that is, there was a guy who was the former CEO of ExxonMobil Corporation. No small organization. If you're running that, you're pretty sharp.
Yeah.
He was meeting with a ministry leader one time, and the ministry leader said to him, "I know you like ministries that have a big vision." And the guy said, "No, I like ministries that get things done." So one of the big mistakes I think a lot of ministries make is they want to come in and pitch a big vision and tell stories. And a lot of the more sophisticated funders really, they're asking the question, well, is that story 1 in 1, 1 in 10, 1 in 1,000,000? I don't know. So you've got to actually you've got to actually have data and case study. You have to actually have a story that you can, that's compelling, but also demonstratable.
Yeah.
You can't come in and no, the days are over where you come in and you pitch we're gonna reach all of China. If you'll give 50,000 a year for 5 years, we can do it. No, people don't do that anymore.
Right. Yeah.
And the younger generations, the millennials and Gen Zs and people behind them, all think that way now. They're like, so the principle is you want to have an investor, not an owner. So what you're asking people to do is make an investment because they get a return on that investment. It's not a financial return, but it's a spiritual return. So you have to understand what that person's passion is. What do they care about? Do they care about a specific people? Do they care about a specific process? Do they care about a specific problem? Whatever it may be, then you have to figure out whether you actually can address it. And if you can address it, then you explain how using a NISO framework. It sounds very businessy, but the truth is,
That's how these people think.
better make sense, and you better be fairly on point. Or there's lots of options, and they get approached by a lot of people. So I've told people, you want your voice to be above the noise, and the way you do that is being really excellent in describing your ministry and showing evidence of it working.
Yeah. Because anybody can have a big vision, but you want to say what you're doing about it and the kind of like the tangible.
Yeah, you got to make it make sense. And that's where that NISO thing works.
Yeah.
You tell the story in a way that they can connect all the dots, and they're like, wow, this is pretty cool. This is interesting. Another thing I would say is one of the things people make the mistake all the time is they send me like their annual report or some big document. And I don't read them. I don't have time.
Right.
But the people who send one to me with a Post-it note on the front that says, I tagged the page I want you to look at, and it's got a little tag on it, and I open to that page and they've highlighted what they want me to read, I read it.
Nice.
So what I'm doing is I'm making it easy for them to learn who I am. I'm not making them have to, travel halfway around the world to go see it. And, I can tell them the story well, and media plays a big part in that. Yeah. If you do it well, and simple media like photos, but photos that have a message in them, not just some guy standing in rags or something. You've got to be smart about this.
Totally.
There's a lot of competition for funds, and so you got to be different than everybody else.
Yeah, I love what you said. I think you hit on it great, where it was like, people don't really have the time or want to make the large investment. You have to make it easy for them, and media or videos are like a great way to do that, as the tool that it makes it easy. It's like the Post-it note. Like videos can be the Post-it note for you that says, go to this section. It's like the quick way that people can get invested. I love that.
I mean, it's as simple as, if somebody comes into a meeting with me and they want to open up their laptop and show me a PowerPoint, I'll say, stop. Let's just talk.
Yeah.
I want to, you don't even know what so
why you care about it.
I was in software sales for very many years before I did this. And one of the principles we always had was don't spill all your candy on the table in your first meeting, because too many choices just paralyze people. So get to know what they care about, then bring them to stuff that they care about. And they'll keep wanting to talk to you because you're meeting a need they have. See, the problem is they have a need they can't satisfy because they're running a company or something. You come on and say, I'll help you with that need. Here's how. And then they'll give because they want to see that happen. It's a passion.
Yeah.
Does that make
And
sense?
oh, totally. And it's actually
Yeah.
brilliant because it's like, if they were to come to you with this huge PowerPoint and you're like, you don't really know what my issue
I don't
is
even know
that
what I
I'm
care about. So you're going to show me
you're being too
everything.
generic. Whereas if you found out what I cared about first, all you needed to come to me was with that one slide that I care about, and then I'm already sold.
I mean, a classic. It was a funny story. I was in India and I was meeting with this ministry leader. And we sit down. He goes, "I show you PowerPoint. I'm jet lagged. I'm tired." And the guy brings up the PowerPoint, he starts showing it, and I notice in the corner it says 1 of 290.
Oh, wow.
I went through 290.
No.
I avoid the guy. It's like,
Yeah.
you don't have any value for my time. You haven't never tried to find out what I want to know. You just jump right in. Don't do that. Don't do
Yeah.
that.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
So, yeah.
Well, that was super powerful. You mentioned Gen Z briefly. Are there ways that you see organizations like trying to engage Gen Z, or any kind of thoughts in terms of trying to reach younger generations? What maybe you've seen that done well or not.
So the
Um,
main thing we're seeing is we're starting to bring this generosity stuff into that generation so that they have a bedrock understanding of what it is to be a person who's generous, and then how to be discerning about that. Uh, there's a number of organizations that we participate with, which are targeting younger generations. A lot of places in the world, places like Indonesia and many countries in Africa, like the median age is like 16, 18 years old. So if you want to have long-term success in those organizations, in those countries, in those places, you better have a strategy for the young people.
Mhm.
You really should. And we've seen young people, like a great example. There's an organization I know, where this little girl, she was the granddaughter of the guy who was launching this ministry. Again, I'm not going to say where. Went there, and she was, I think, 9 years old, 8 years old. She was quite young, and she went over there, and they were looking at these slums, and they found this school in these slums. Since they went into the school and they're talking to the kids, and they found out that some kids can't go to school there because they can't afford it, and it was $5 a month. And the little girl said, "I get $5 a week in allowance." So she said, this 8-year-old said, "I'll fund 4 of these kids myself." Well, then anyway, that was the launch of what's now a very significant ministry. So now she's 17, I think, and she goes around and does speaking engagements in high schools and churches and everything else, where she's challenging young people to get involved.
Yeah.
And she's coming here to Chattanooga in February, and she's gonna speak at, I think, 3 schools.
Yeah.
And the schools, they're all Christian schools, but
Sure.
the schools are excited because here's a young person telling young people how they can activate, basically activating them for a lifetime of giving and ministry. So, I'm not sure that answers your question, but I think it's interesting.
No, I
And
love that. Like,
yeah.
creating that foundation and bedrock of generosity. Do you think, I don't know, like in the example you gave, she's almost like a peer to them, like peer to peer. I guess my question is, how do we get that foundation of generosity instilled? Would it be like finding a peer, another young person who's doing it to impact and inspire the other ones? Or
Well, I mean, it's an interesting question. I'm not sure I've thought about that. I think, at
yeah,
least
that's fine.
from her perspective, um, the generosity tools themselves are very easily adapted to younger people. It's that they're just scripture and messages, and in the one that the stations of generosity, which is designed for an oral culture in a third world country. So it's so there's also like you act stuff out, you make up a poem or a song. I mean, it's really easy to embrace. So it'd be very easy for a person in their teens to take that to their friends and just do it. And there's nothing to stop them. And
Yeah.
so I'm not sure that answers your question, but
No, that's good.
I mean, there's organizations in Africa which are organizations that have churches that children plant. And they're churches of children because there's so many children, and
Yeah.
so it's really interesting. It's something that I wish the church would think
Focus
about,
on more.
reflect on more. What are we doing? Because our faith is generational faith. It lives and dies on a generation basis. So if we're not reproducing, these principles and these passions and all these things in the next generation, it can really shrink really quickly.
Yeah.
I'm 65, so it's easy for me to say, but if it hadn't been for people in my life, I wouldn't be here now, right? So
Right.
it's important.
No, I'm often asking orgs and asking people like how to engage younger generations because, like I said, I grew up overseas as a son of missionaries, and I feel, and then my brother also went into the ministry, and I feel like my parents could a lot more easily live off of generous donations and support from friends and family than my brother does. He's having a lot harder time, trying to do the same thing just because of the generational difference and gap. So it's kind of a question I always like posing because I don't.
It's fun. I mean, I was with Campus Crusade for 9.5 years, and I had to raise personal support and all that stuff. It was different then. It was much easier than it is now.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, hey,
NISO
I think
framework might help him too. Teach him that.
yeah, I should. I'll definitely mention it to him. Great. Well, I think you answered most of my questions. You did a great job. Is there anything else that you kind of want to mention in terms of media or communication for nonprofits? It's okay, it's not, but I like just throwing it out there in case there's something we haven't touched on or talked about.
Not really. It would be a summary of just be intentional, think about your audience, understand they're an investor, not a, if it's for fundraising purposes, just classic, know your market, and you have to know both your ministry market and your funding market. And so you will tell both those, articulate those things well, because you got to promote the ministry within the ministry market you're in. We have a principle. It's like a DNA principle, which is create the animal you want to reproduce. So make sure that whatever it is you're making is what you want reproduced. So you're making a video that you want reproduced. Make sure the video is telling the story you want it told, way you want it told, and be intentional about that. Don't just throw it together. Don't just do cheap. iPhone videos are fine if it's the right context, but make sure you think it out. Don't just slap something together because you may wish you hadn't.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe to our channels for future content. It really helps us out. This podcast is brought to you by Travelite Studios. Travelite is a full-service film production company that specializes in documentary and promotional videos for your nonprofit. We are a multicultural team of award-winning creatives with a passion to help organizations grow their reach. We can be your media team or work alongside your media team to deliver captivating content that energizes your audience. Travelite takes the time to truly get to know you and your needs and includes extra tools to help make your videos be the most powerful they can be. Go to travelitestudios.com right now to plan a project and have your story and solutions presented to viewers in a beautifully compelling way. That's travelitestudios.com.